Hey guys, my name is Matsumiao, and welcome to our episode of Monday Mailbox. This is a video series where you, the viewer, can submit your gaming-related questions, and then I will give my humble opinion on them. To get the formalities out of the way real quick, if you'd like to submit your own question that could be featured in an upcoming episode, you can do so by leaving a comment down below, or by sending me a Facebook or Twitter message. The first question today comes from Joel, and is, I was wondering if you think that Siege should have a solo queue for ranks. So this has been a pretty highly requested feature for quite some time. If you're someone who is solo queuing and you go against a 5-stack or even 3 or 4 people that are grouped together, that kind of teamwork and coordination usually puts you and everyone on your team that also is solo queuing at a pretty significant disadvantage. And so if there was just simply a way for you to be able to queue into ranked matches where you were guaranteed to be paired up with others and everyone that you went against was also solo, that would kind of level the playing field. The thing is though, at least to my understanding, that's sort of already the way that the system works right now. If you're solo queuing, it tries to pair you up with people that are also by themselves. Now obviously, it doesn't work every single time in the name of trying to keep the queue times down, and also, you do need to pair that 4 squad up with someone. Eventually, they do need to find someone to join their party. You do need to have those solo people joining those kinds of groups, but by and large, they try to keep that consistency to keep it fair for everyone. One improvement that I would really like to see done is to change the UI in a subtle way to actually give players the information of who is on A's team and who is just by themselves. This is the way that it works in Overwatch. At the beginning of a round, it is very obvious if the teams are going to be balanced. You're going to notice that the other side has a full 5-stack or 6-stack, I think, in that game, while on your team, it's all solo queue players. And so if they're able to implement something like that in Rainbow Six Siege, I think it would have a lot of great benefits. One of them is that it would actually allow you to know if the system that we talked about earlier, where it tries to pair everyone that is solo queue, if that system is actually working. If it becomes readily apparent that that's not the case and you're constantly going against 5-stacks because now it's very obvious, you literally know who's in a group and who isn't, then I think we could go on in later and request that they do add in a solo queue. This will also make it crystal clear who is partied up with cheaters who are trying to boost their matchmaking. If you're going against someone who is taking people out at the start of a match, flying around all over the place, it can be kind of difficult to know if they're partied up with anyone else. They could just be simply trying to ruin the experience for everyone, or they could be queuing up with people to try to give them free, easy wins to boost their matchmaking. With this system, though, it's going to be very obvious who they're with, and so you can report everyone in that party so that Ubisoft can take the necessary steps because they are also a part of the problem. All in all, though, I'm right there with you. Going against a 5-stack when you're by yourself is incredibly discouraging, but I think before they try to add in a brand new ranked queue, which should come with its own issues like longer queue times for everyone, I think they just need to improve the UI to give us the information to even know if this is necessary. If it becomes very obvious that no, the system that they have right now doesn't work, then maybe try to improve upon that, or then give us a solo queue. But I think there are a couple things they can do before we get to that point to make the experience better for everyone, but obviously that is just my opinion. The next question comes from Tom, and it is, do you think that Battlefield should be worried about the new Call of Duty Modern Warfare? Yeah, I definitely think that Battlefield needs to be concerned. This is stepping into their territory. They've now got some reasonable competition. Now, obviously, they've always kind of competed because they're a video game, which means they're going to be competing against each other already, but they've always had kind of this rivalry going on, but they've also been very distinctly different games. Battlefield's always been about the large scale, while Call of Duty has been the complete opposite, where it's more infantry and smaller focus. But now, if they actually do add in 100-player count mode, or at least 20v20 with vehicles, ATVs, tanks driving around all over the place, like that sounds like Battlefield, and if they can do it well, I have a suspicion that people are going to jump ship and try out the new Call of Duty, and if it's amazing, then they're probably going to stick with that and just ignore the Battlefield franchise. The one thing that I think it's really going to hinge on, though, is what is their network performance going to be like? Yeah, it's awesome to say that you're going to have have 100 players running around on a map, large scale action, like that sounds awesome, but if it's just simply a laggy mess, then who cares? If everyone's getting taken out around corners or your shots aren't registering, that's not going to be an enjoyable experience. This is probably one of the reasons why the Battlefield franchise has always stuck with that 64 player counts. This could be an engine limitation, but I have a suspicion it's because they know that if they bump that on up, that it's going to be a laggy mess and it's really going to degrade from the overall experience. And so the hope that I have is that one of the reasons why they're allowing for these larger player counts is because they just updated their engine. If they went on in specifically to ensure that they can have a lot of people on a map, and that's what they designed their engine around, then that's going to alleviate a lot of those concerns. But we won't really know until we get our hands on it. In general, though, I definitely think that Battlefield needs to be concerned, but honestly, this might be a good thing for the franchise in the long run. Competition is a good thing. This may actually finally get EA and DICE to release a product at release that is well polished and has plenty of content. That seems to be something that they've been really struggling with these last couple of Battlefield games. They now have someone that is going to take their player base, potentially a large one if the next Battlefield is a complete failure. And so if they don't bring something to the table and bring something fantastic for whatever the next Battlefield game is going to be, it may not be looking good. And so I'm really crossing my fingers that this is actually going to be something that is a positive for the Battlefield franchise in the future, but obviously we are just going to have to wait and see. The next question comes from Jacob, and it is, don't you think as soon as pro players don't like something, they will instantly patch it, but if normal players play it and don't like it, they won't patch it or change it? Well, from the sounds of it, it seems like what you're saying is that Ubisoft takes the feedback of pro players more seriously than just your average player. And to some extent, I definitely think that you're onto something. When Ubisoft talks about why they're updating an operator, they always reference the platinum and diamond pick and win rate of all of the operators. Those are the better players of Siege. Some of them might be pros, some of them might just be your average players, but they clearly know what's going on. And I think that's actually a good way of looking at this game. You want to balance characters around the highest level of play, because if there's something wrong with that, which may not be identifiable at the lower tiers because people just simply don't know how to use them properly, those operators in the right way, then you're not going to be able to balance the game accordingly. Now, all that being said though, you would actually, I think, be surprised at how much feedback the pros give and how little Ubisoft actually does anything about it. I've only spoken with a couple of pro players, so I can't speak on behalf of all of them, but I do know that they've definitely shared their frustration that they've made a lot of suggestions that Ubisoft has not implemented whatsoever. They feel like they're kind of being ignored, just like your average players. And so I think Ubisoft, at the end of the day, takes feedback from all sources. They're trying to accommodate the highest level of play, but they're also trying to ensure that people that just play the game casually also have an enjoyable experience. They're not just trying to cater to one necessarily over the other in all circumstances. Now, do I think that Ubisoft could be doing a much better job with this? Absolutely. A lot of players on console right now feel like their issues are being ignored. Something happens on PC and it gets fixed fairly fast. Let's be real here. It's not like it's the speediest of process, but a lot of the issues that console players have been having for a long time now seem to go unaddressed. And so those people, rightfully so, feel like they're being ignored. All in all, though, I don't think it's as black and white as people make it out to be. I think that Ubisoft could do better. I definitely think that more transparency, talking about issues on all platforms and all different skill levels is something that they need to try to do a little bit better at. But I definitely don't think that they're catering to one necessary group, especially the pro players, over everyone else, but that is just based off of what I've heard and who I've talked to from the community. The next question comes from Joe, and it is, what do you think about an operator with a gadget similar to Jaeger, but instead of destroying incoming projectiles, it sends them back? In order to keep it balanced, they can only have 2 or 3 of these gadgets, and each one only works with 1 projectile. Well, I definitely agree there needs to be another alternative to Jaeger. I realize that's kind of what Warden was designed to do, But as we all know, that didn't really turn out. Not only is his weapon pretty lackluster, but his gadget is incredibly situational. To be an operator that is supposed to be kind of a walking ADS, a walking counter to all of these nades, that's just not the way that it works whatsoever. And so to have another gadget introduced along these lines, I can see where you're coming from. The thing is, though, is that I don't know if I'm 100% on board with this kind of a gadget. The idea of throwing in a nade and then having it being sent directly back to me doesn't sound like a fun gameplay design. You guys all know that if you want to use a nade properly, you're going to want to cook it so that when it lands, it takes out the player and they don't have really any time to react. But if then the gadget flings it right back at your face and you get taken out, like, that's not a fun gameplay mechanic. There's going to be nothing you can do. I guess you could try to drone out the room every single time you want to throw in a nade to identify if it's there, but that's unreasonable. People are gonna throw nades, and to have that just take you out or the teammate that was directly next to you, I can only imagine that this is going to increase the amount of TKs that occurs. I just don't know if that is the best way of going about it. And so all in all, I do think that there needs to be an alternative. I just don't know if I'm sold, at least with a return to sender gadget. Yeah, guys, that is what it for today's episode of Monday Mailbox. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you thought about what we discussed in today's video. Do you like the idea of adding in a solo queue into Siege? Do you not think that's necessary? Let me know what you think down below. As always, if you'd like to submit your own question for an upcoming episode, you can also leave a comment or by sending me a Facebook or Twitter message. But until next time, guys, have a good one and take it easy.